All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Stefaan Verhulst. I'm the co-founder of GovLab, and I have the great fortune to introduce today's session, which is focusing on trailblazing technologies for peace, where we're going to feature two of the winners of the Kluz PeaceTech Prize that were present at the event last year as well. During the United Nations General Assembly, when we featured the PeaceTech winners as well. Just before I go into some of the details, the session will be recorded today, and it also will be shared publicly on the Kluz Prize PeaceTech website. Share your questions if you have any questions in the Q&A, so that we can also make sure that today's speakers can be interactive and respond to the questions you might have. And also, thanks for being respectful to all the current situations that are happening that obviously might be sensitive to many as well. Now, as it relates to the Kluz PeaceTech Prize, a few opening introductions. The prize was initiated about 3 years ago and is a prize that seeks to celebrate the responsible use of technology for peace building and conflict prevention as well. It's a prize that is initiated by Arthur Kluz from Kluz Ventures, and we have had the great fortune of being the partners at GovLab, of being the partners that help to organize and implement the Kluz Prize. As such, if you want to have more information, you can find more information about the kluzprize.org as well. Now, what do we mean by peace tech? Now, obviously, we are in challenging times. There's no shortage of conflicts worldwide. And obviously, technology quite often plays a key role in also managing the conflicts. And what we hope to do is actually change the perspective on the role of technology as it relates to conflict, as it relates to peace as well. And so the whole purpose of PeaceTech and the whole promise of PeaceTech is to actually start leveraging emerging technologies in order to prevent conflict or to mitigate the suffering that happens when conflict emerges as well, and to subsequently also build peace post-conflict as well. Now, PeaceTech is too complex a topic to actually go fully into detail. This is just an overview of our topic mapping that we developed kind of a few years ago about what does PeaceTech all entail. But it suffices to say is that it's emerging, and it also suffices to say, as we have written before, that it actually requires a lot more attention and, more importantly, a lot more investment in comparison with how technology is being used elsewhere and for other purposes as well. Now, there are multiple use cases, and if you're interested, we actually did develop a topic map, as I mentioned a few years ago, where we featured a few possible use cases that can be inspirational. And today, of course, the whole purpose of today's call is to actually feature two inspirational use cases as well. But just to give an example of what PeaceTech can mean, it can also mean, for instance, the use of technology post-conflict. So you actually build and establish peace in a conflict zone, so that the zone and the country or the region can actually become an environment where peace and security are being provided in a meaningful way. But it can also be used pre-conflict, where you actually try to learn from voices and try to understand what is the current perspectives and opinions that might fuel certain kinds of conflict as well. Now, PeaceTech matters more than ever before, in part because, of course, we have massive concerns and massive conflict zones as we speak, but also because technology is rapidly evolving. And especially artificial intelligence, of course, has become a key part in the emergent technology space. And as AI and data and other technologies are advancing, we also have to really start paying attention on how those technologies can be used in a responsible way for actually peace building and conflict prevention as well. Now, if you're interested about the kinds of technologies, if you're interested also in some of the priorities in order to unlock technologies for peace, I recommend going to our website, where we, of course, feature not only the winners of our Kluz PeaceTech Prize, who are going to speak today, but we also feature some of our kind of thought pieces in order to build a movement around PeaceTech and really put PeaceTech at the front of some of the conversations as it relates to security and conflict as well. So without further ado, and again, I don't want to give a presentation here myself on what PeaceTech might be. I think the best is to actually learn from practitioners in the field. And we have the great fortune of having two leaders today that will present some of the lessons learned and also share some of their current activities in order to leverage tech for peace building as well. And so I'm delighted to have Bogdan Ivanel, who is the founder and chairperson of Commit Global, who is calling in from Bucharest. Also, Shawn Guttman, who is the founder and CEO of Project Didi, who is calling in from Israel, and Hannah Chafetz, who is a research fellow at the GovLab, who will moderate today's session, and she is calling in from Toronto. So I leave the floor to Hannah to manage the conversation, and then at the end, I will join you again in order to also moderate some of the questions and also possibly even have some questions for Bogdan and Shawn as well. Over to you, Hannah, and thanks so much, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, Stefaan. So super excited to be here and to learn a little bit more about both Shawn and Bogdan, your work. So the first question that I have is for Bogdan. So one way to approach PeaceTech is to use different types of digital technologies like mobile applications, data dashboards, or even social media to learn more about how people have been impacted by a conflict and also to facilitate the delivery of aid. So Bogdan, can you tell us a little bit more about how Commit Global may be using some of these technologies and also how some of your work has evolved since the 2023 Kluz Prize for PeaceTech?
Thanks for the question. Thanks for the invitation to be on the panel. For us, it all started with when the war broke in Ukraine 2.5 years ago. So at that point, we were an organization mainly based in Romania. And as many of you know, Romania, together with Poland, share the longest European borders with Ukraine. So on the day that the war started, we ceased all our regular activity and we started building the necessary infrastructure for both the civil society, the international organization, and the government to be able to receive the refugees and support the refugees in good order. So we acted on 5 different layers with the technology that we built in 48 hours to a week. The first layer was access to information, having one point of access to information, no matter who the actor that was giving the information was. So the refugees wouldn't have to choose between the logo of the Red Cross or the logo of the UN agencies. The second layer was the aid management solutions that we built. So everything from housing allocation to transportation to managing of medicine and traceability of food on the ground. And we offered all of these solutions to the government agencies and UN agencies operating on the ground, and they're being used until now. The third layer was access to services for the refugees, and especially the chronically ill. So if they were coming, if there were cancer patients and there were people that needed access to dialysis, HIV patients, etc., they had an entry point through the platforms that we built, and their cases would be managed in real time by civil society organizations and institutions in the host countries. The fourth layer was access to mental health care, and we developed together with the Veteran Affairs in the US a solution for people with PTSD on the ground that we deployed in Ukrainian. And the last layer, but maybe one of the most important, was capacity building for the local NGOs on the ground, for the smaller NGOs that were offering support. So everything from volunteer management to being able to raise donations or to do stock management, everything that we take for granted in the business kind of sector. Amazon can do amazing stock management, but it's not even the case for the Red Cross. Not even the large organizations are able to do that or have the systems to do that in a really efficient manner, not to speak of the smaller local organizations that were receiving a lot of support back then. And the most important fact is that we brought all of this into a single entry point. So what we got was hundreds of local and international NGOs operating on the same platforms, operating on the same shared infrastructure, and only one entry point for the refugee. So that way we got traceability, we got interoperability, and we got efficiency for the organizations on the ground. And it was a first in humanitarian assistance. So far, more than 2.5 million refugees have used the systems. And these are the systems that got the Kluz Prize last year. And our vision was to take this further, to take this to other geographies that need this kind of support. The first sentence that was uttered by the head of the UNHCR when he saw what we built in Romania was, "Oh, I wish we had this in Lebanon." So the prize helped us a lot with gaining momentum with our vision of a shared humanitarian infrastructure at the global level. And right now, in fact, we're operating and we're deploying this infrastructure in Lebanon and in other places like Armenia, for example, in support of refugees out of Nagorno-Karabakh. And this makes the organizations on the ground much more efficient and gives them technology that otherwise wouldn't have, and at a much lower cost, because we don't need to build and rebuild over and over again, especially when time is of the essence.
Wow, amazing work and super inspirational. I'd love to hear from Shawn as well. So I know another way of approaching PeaceTech is leveraging technologies that are developed by the private sector, like things like AI and machine learning and even big data for different kinds of peace building initiatives, or to understand how people feel or the current sentiments about a situation. So Shawn, how has Project Didi leveraged some of these technologies? And can you tell us a bit more about how your work has evolved over the last year?
Certainly, thank you. So my story with Project Didi started with my master's, doing my master's in diplomacy and conflict studies a couple of years ago, and I was exposed to all of these amazing academic theories and concepts that, when learning about them in an academic setting, I was like, wow, these perfectly explain why, all of the Middle East peace processes have succeeded or failed or become stuck. I was amazed and enlightened by what all of these seeming tools could provide for peace builders, people who are their day-to-day work is trying to figure out how to solve these entrenched violent conflicts. But as soon as my curiosity was piqued, then the following question came of, okay, well, if these are great and amazing and explain things so wonderfully, then why isn't there peace? Why are we still stuck in these conflicts? Why, why in Israel, why in the Middle East have we not been able to move forward? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, okay, well, these theories are stuck within a human bottleneck. In order to be able to use them, it takes a human who's going to sit down and collect the data and process it and think about it and use their intuition and these theories to say, okay, I think we should do this, I think we should do that. And then I realized that, but wait, with the evolution in machine learning and AI, with the development of LLMs and the use of NLP, all the human bottleneck can now be replaced by these technologies. And instead of relying on people who are trying to figure out, okay, do these theories exist and are used here, we can now create models to identify them in real time. And I started running with that. And saying, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Sorry, Shawn, I think there's an issue with your audio.
Okay. Is that better? Did that do anything? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, much better. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that's what we. So that's the journey that we set upon for Project Didi, saying, okay, let's take these amazing concepts and theories, build a machine learning categorization classification model that will analyze massive amounts of data and start to look for these things in real time. And what we want to do with that is to then use that output, that information, to be able to provide real-time feedback to change makers who are working on the ground trying to solve these conflicts. I'm a very pragmatic, practical person. You know, if something works, great. How do you make it bigger? How do you expand it? How do you get those ripple effects to really get out into the wider society? And if it's not working, then okay, how do we identify that it's not working as quickly as possible? And how do we adapt and evolve as quickly as the conditions around us do as well? And my hope is that with the tools that we've created at Project Didi, we'll be able to just amplify all of the positive work that all of the NGOs and grassroots organizations and even the politicians who are trying to create the change and so on, just turn up the volume to max on all of them and watch the ripple effects throughout societies and create the conditions that will allow for large-scale social change and structural change needed to solve conflicts like the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You're asking, you know, what was happening, what's been happening since the Kluz Prize in September. My life changed drastically a couple of weeks after it with the start of the war. It has been an incredibly depressing and saddening time, seeing the destruction and loss of lives on both sides, and just feeling frustrated and stuck. And, you know, how did this thing happen again? How are we in this situation again? Why haven't we solved this? And as soon as the war started, I ended up sitting down with my team and saying, okay, you know, what are we going to do? And we all collectively said, okay, we need to put our focus onto the war. We need to start a pilot program as soon as possible, get our tech, bring our models and put it onto the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and try to figure out how do we become a positive force within this tragic and horrible war that can push and create an opportunity for peace and for the end of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And that's what we've been working on for the last couple of months. This summer, we're going to be launching a pilot program, working with a couple of local change makers, trying to analyze their effect and impact on public discourse, and work with them to try and create enough of a mass within the public sphere that says, we want peace, we want to negotiate a solution already, and take it from there. Yeah, so hopefully by the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, we'll have some interesting news on how we've succeeded and what we've learned from this whole process.
Wow, thank you so much, Shawn. That's really great. I just want to remind everyone that we will have time for audience Q&A at the end of the session. So please feel free to paste any questions that you have for the panelists in the Q&A function, and then we'll get to them at the end. So the next question that I have here is for Bogdan. So I know that you mentioned that a key area that Commit Global is focusing on is accessing information. And so what other ways do you think that technology can be harnessed for peace? And I know you mentioned several at the beginning, but what do you see as the potential of peace tech? And are there any major trends in the field that you've been seeing?
So for us, it's pretty simple. Everybody's looking for civil society for the answers of the major crises of the day. Not only the wars, but everything from disasters that happened around the world to, you know, helping the vulnerable groups around. And unfortunately, civil society has been left behind in this chase for digitization. The same thing that has been used successfully by business to scale and to get to more people in faster hasn't been used successfully by civil society. and has been used only quasi-successful by government. And in many situations, the governments are the problem, and the only support that comes to these vulnerable people is through civil society. So our whole initiative started from the idea that we shouldn't continue to leave civil society behind, and the only way forward is for them to be able to afford and have the know-how to implement the digital solutions that they need, is to have a shared infrastructure, not to build over and over again, because there's no resources for that and we have no time for that. And if we look at civil society, I think, as I said, it might not be the sexiest place to look at, but I think the most impactful place to look at is capacity building, capacity for these organizations, because most of these organizations, even the large organizations, an organization like the Red Cross or Save the Children, spends more time doing internal work than really helping the people on the ground. And if we can relieve some of this pressure with, as I said before, with some of the systems that are just basic stuff in a business environment, like a stock management, like a very functional stock management solution for an organization like the Red Cross, it saves a lot of time and it brings capacity and it brings more data so we can know what needs to be done on the ground. So this is what we've seen over and over again, that of course we can use the cutting edge technology, AI and everything. But for many of these organizations, their needs are with trail edge technology. They need to build a website. They need to have something more efficient than an Excel spreadsheet for managing their cases. They need to stay safe. In many of these environments, and especially in war environments, there's a lot of questions around the safety of the data, of privacy, and there are a lot of attacks on this organization if they do have some digital records. So capacity is the first stage, I would say, for us to get better at this, and then coordination mechanism between these organizations, because unfortunately, and if we go back and look at the case in a country that we're intervening right now, like Lebanon, they're suffering from all the crises at the same time, all potential crises at the same time. Political crisis, economic crisis, financial crisis, war in the southern part of the country, etc. And there's no capacity whatsoever in the government to be able to manage this anymore. So everybody's stepping in. International organizations are stepping in, UN agencies are stepping in, foreign countries are stepping in, but there is no coordination of what's happening on the ground. So that means that there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of efforts and money, actually a lot of money being spent foolishly on the ground. And that's because there are no central coordination mechanism, and technology can solve this. Technology can bring not only coordination, but also traceability of what happens with the aid on the ground, what happens with the medicine on the ground, what happens with the hospital beds, and what happens with the people. And I think that was the biggest added value of what we did around the war in Ukraine, because we brought this kind of traceability and coordination. And that's what we're trying to do over and over again. And unfortunately, many times you need to demolish a way of working, which is usually happening in silos, a lot of ego between all of these organizations. But in the end, when we complain that we don't have enough money to go around to save lives, both in Sudan and in Ukraine, we need to understand that technology, money spent foolishly on technology, is not the best use. So coordination, I think, would be the word here.
There's one thing that you mentioned was about the safety of data. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what Commit Global is doing to mitigate this, understanding that this, of course, is a really big concern during times of conflict.
So the problem with most of the civil society organizations is not only that they don't have the technology, but they don't have the know-how of how to build this technology or how to operate the technology and how to keep it safe. And that's why our vision is not only one of a shared infrastructure around the world, reusable modules that can be used in different geographies by different organizations, either in shared or in common, but also a central capacity, an organization like ours. And that's the proposition of Commit Global, that can take care of this infrastructure in the long term. which means the boring job of maintenance, but also keeping it safe and training the people on the ground, training these organizations to be able to use it safely. So a shared infrastructure also means shared standards. And unfortunately, right now, civil society doesn't have standards in how it's using technology on the ground. And this is one of the byproducts of what we're doing. And it's a very good byproduct in that. And of course, nothing is 100% safe, but it can be much safer if we're able to centralize resources and to centralize know-how in that regard.
That's great. Thanks so much, Bogdan. So the next question is for you, Shawn. So I know right now a lot that what we're hearing about AI and machine learning is about how it's being used to cause harm, or how it could misrepresent data or lead to the misuse of data, but not so much about its potential to also deliver a positive impact. So what I'd like to hear from you is, what major challenges or issues do you think need to be addressed first in order to accelerate the use of AI and machine learning for peace in a responsible way?
It's an interesting question, because I mean, so much of what's in that question is just how people subjectively perceive AI and machine learning and the use of it. You know, I've spent the last couple of years watching, you know, every new TV show that talks about AI, and you know, and it's all imagining the worst possible cases ever. You know, a computer is going to decide my future from the moment I'm born, and you know, I can't, like, how are we letting that happen? You know, like, even to the point of when I talk about about building a company a peace tech company that uses AI to make peace, I have to like warn people and say, no, I'm not building Skynet or Westworld or whatever. Like, you know, that's the farthest thing. You know, I think the major challenge facing us is just is this cultural idea that we've built for ourselves, which has been based upon what we've chosen to relate to as success in a successful way. Like, I remember, you know, when I was doing my master's, I did a course in big data and AI, and the professor loved to bring up the examples of, here's AI being used in policing and how bad it is, and here's AI being used in all these different all these other test cases, and you know, and it's trying to figure out, you know, who's the bad person in the crowd of everything. And you know, and that's where our minds go to automatically. And both within the fiction world and also within the peace tech world in general, we're not doing a great job at saying, here's the way that it actually can work in a different way. You know, for like, when I talk about Project Didi, one of the first things I say is, as a peace tech company, the last thing that we believe in is that a computer is going to come and make peace, that a computer can solve your conflicts, that a computer can negotiate a solution where no human, you know, can ever do. Where, you know, the message that I've been trying to send out is, technology is meant to help humans solve their own conflicts. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to help. That's what we're trying to help with. We're trying to help the change makers, the practitioners, the people on the ground succeed as best as possible and as quickly as possible. Because, you know, every minute that passes that we haven't solved these things are getting exponentially worse. And we need to figure out how to do that. But ultimately, like, I think that the biggest challenge facing us in getting out this message of how technology can help and make things better is more successes. You know, I have a colleague who we talk about this all the time, and he says to me, you'll get funding, you'll succeed, you'll grow the minute that you can show that you can actually back up what it is that you're doing and you can succeed. You know, you want to see the peace tech world explode? Yeah, sure. Make peace in the Middle East, and everyone will get on board. You know, and so I think, again, the biggest challenge that we have today within all of this is trying to spark people's imaginations, either through success or through fiction, about, here's how we can use AI and machine learning and all these evolving technologies to actually make your lives better and more hopeful and more peaceful and create that world that we all want and expect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Shawn. So the last question that I have is actually for both of you. And we've seen some really great applications about technology for peace, including both of yours. But peace tech is an emerging field and is relatively new. And so I'd like to leave on kind of a positive note here before we go into audience Q&A, is that what do you think we need to do to really build momentum and accelerate a large peace tech movement across the world? Do we need new policies? What kind of awareness do we need? What kinds of funding models? How can tech companies play a role? So I'll leave it there, and let's start with Bogdan.
So we ourselves are more than an international organization. We're a new approach in how things can be done. And as Shawn has been saying, we did something, it was successful, and we had a very particular use case in Ukraine, and our proposal is to take it to a global level, and this is what we're doing right now. And we already have been convincing, funders and a number of governments to do that, especially the Dutch, Germans, and Romanian governments who stand behind us right now in deploying this infrastructure at the global level. So our approach is that we need a key player, a central player, that would be able to consolidate all this technology that is being built around the world, improve it, maintain it in the long run, and deploy it on the ground. Hold the hand of these organizations that don't understand technology, that don't know how to operate with technology, hold their hand day in and day out while they start operating on this technology on the ground. And also, by having this third-party actor in civil society, a kind of a digital Red Cross, you can also integrate business solutions in humanitarian assistance, because you can do it through this third-party actor that we're building right now under the name of Commit Global. So having a specialized organization that does that is one way forward, and creating an economy of scale behind it. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Bogdan. And over to you, Shawn.
Yeah, it's I've been in trying to be someone who me myself are trying to push forward the whole peace tech movement, and trying to, I use the term everywhere that I can, and I'm always met with the same look of, oh, that's interesting. What is that? Where is that? How have I never heard of it? So I guess I can answer the question by first saying, well, I know we'll have succeeded when, people don't respond to me in that way, but more, all these pitch competition forums and VC interest forums and all of that, I'm just looking forward to the day when one of the fields there will just say peace tech after fintech and biotech and all these things. And, but as for the question of how do we get there, I look a lot to academia. I think peace tech is something that academia should be pushing forward. I look to all of the innovation centers at all of the universities, and and look for the ones that I have, and also wonder, why aren't there more peace tech support in those innovation hubs? And how can, and academia is a wonderful place to say, okay, well, let's play around with this without the, the worries of external funding and all that. And yeah, I really look to academia to, to push things forward and provide the environment, for companies like me to come in and succeed. Beyond that, I think we're trying a funding model within ourselves of saying, okay, we want to be focused on peace, but we're a for-profit company. We want to be growing. We want to be able to be reliant upon ourselves. And so, how do we gain enough revenue by working with non-peace related clients that enables us to subsidize our work for peace? It's a model that we're trying to figure out. I would love more support in figuring out how to make it work. Having access to more mentors within the peace tech world, having more and figuring out ways to just expand our reach and expand our Sorry, my audio is cutting out again. Sorry, hope that is
Sorry.
better now.
Try talking again.
Can you hear me now? Is that okay? No?
It's still a little bit slow.
Sorry, I hope that helps now. Is that any better?
Still a little bit off, but that's okay. While we work that out, I think maybe we'll transition to the audience Q&A, and then we'll get back to it right after that, if that works. So just a reminder, so if you're in the audience, feel free to share any questions for the panelists in the Q&A, and we'll be getting to them shortly. And I'm going to bring back Stefaan to help with some of the Q&A here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hannah, and thanks, Shawn and Bogdan, for setting the stage here for indeed a call for focusing on PeaceTech as a new area that requires a lot more investment that we've had till now, right? Meaning I've always, as I said at the beginning, is that a lot of the investment in technology within the context of conflict and conflict prevention quite often is kind of support to military applications, but obviously this needs to be complemented with kind of efforts that you are initiating as well. And before I go to some of my questions, I do want to pick up the question that Shane Ray Martin posed in the Q&A channel, which is a question for both of you, because in addition to focusing on peace, you also both have kind of an interesting way of actually going about running an organization, right? So, I mean, I think it's interesting that Bogdan was referring to civil society. Obviously, you're both part of that kind of civil society, but also as kind of a private enterprise. And so, question for both of you is, A, what kind of support from investors are you looking for and could be most supportive, right? I mean, obviously, financial support helps, but what else and what kind of financial support are you looking for? And then linked with that, and it goes also a little bit to your question or your statement, Shawn, with regard to KPIs, right? Which is like, you know, how do you measure? I mean, you mentioned, it was interesting that you mentioned like if we're successful, then that will breed success. But what does success look like, right? And how do you even think about KPIs in the kind of context of peace? Right, which is even just to introduce the concept of PeaceTech. It's kind of a nebulous concept, right? Is it about peace? Do we mean no conflict, or do we mean a certain kind of well-being, or do we mean a certain kind of basis upon peace can be built, or is it about preventing of suffering? What Bogdan also has been working on in the kind of the humanitarian context as well. So broad questions. Shawn, perhaps you can start to also test whether you're less robotic than before. But Shawn, perhaps you can start, and then Bogdan can answer as well. And then Hannah, feel free to chime in as well, of course.
Yeah, I hope I fixed the technical issues. We'll see.
You sound less like a technology, and so that's good.
Perfect.
So you're back to human. There you
go. So in terms of investors, what kind of support I'm looking to be to help. I'm looking for people who ultimately have skills and know-how that I'm missing. I know what I know how to do, and I'm learning new things as we go, but I don't believe that I can do this on my own, and investors have the potential to come and help me out with the things that I don't know how to do well. Especially, I don't come from a business background. I don't have an MBA. I don't, this is the first time I've ever put together a business plan and all those things. And having support from investors or who can say, okay, here's how you manage this, here's how you do that. Can be very helpful. Like for better or for worse, I see this as I have one big shot to make this work, and I really wanted to succeed. And especially within the startup world, where they say, okay, well, you know, maybe by your 5th startup, you'll succeed in doing something. Like, you know, when it feels like the goal is, you know, that KPI is peace, you know, I don't want to fail. I want to succeed. And also with what you're asking, Stefaan, about the KPIs, it is a very challenging thing. You know, my tendency when I'm applying for grants or whatnot is to say, oh yeah, you know, you'll know that we've succeeded because we'll have succeeded in making peace. And then I have to say, no, wait, let's break that down. Let's, you know, it has to be more concrete things. And, you know, where we're trying to focus in on is affecting subjectivity and perception. We want to change, we want to help people change hearts and minds. You know, peace comes from that. Peace comes from people, what people think and feel, and less from truth and fact and all of that stuff. And so, you know, I would be looking to things like public opinion surveys, changes in after elections. You know, like what change in political parties and so on, platforms and so on. And also, I mean, I have this weird KPI in a lot of peace situations where it may give me in a little bit of hot water to say it, but I want to see NGOs and grassroots organizations closing down. Like success in getting towards peace means saying, okay, you were helping us to do this. You've succeeded in that. Now it's time to pivot into something else. And especially, you know, looking at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we have a lot of NGOs that have been doing the same thing for 40, 50 years, and they do great work and they're trying to accomplish things. But the fact that they still exist and they're still doing the same thing and they haven't been able to move on is a sign that we've missed the mark. And you know, and I think that'll end up being a healthier, that'll be a good sign that we've created a healthy, peace-filled environment. To see that changeover and to see the people who, you know, are rolling forward and saying, okay, we've moved this much closer to peace. Here are the new challenges. Let's get into that.
Thanks so much, Shawn. Bogdan.
Sorry, for us it's a bit different because we're not a company, we're an NGO, we're a charity. So for us, there's no investor, they're donors, which means that they can, you know, the advantage is that they can get their tax deductions and they can get credit for the support that they gave. They can't get profit at the end of the day. It's just feeling good by the change in the world that they make. The good side of things is that we work not on preventing a war per se, not on preventing conflict, but so that we're prepared and we can act as speedy and as efficient as possible when worse comes to worse, to support those that suffer. And that is very measurable for us. So, you know, I can go now on analytics of any of our solutions and see right now how many people are accessing housing, how fast they're accessing housing, and we improve all of these solutions continuously based on, you know, on the work on the ground and based on this analytics. And this is part of the work that kept me in this field because as you know about me, I come from academia, and there, you know, the impact of your work was so far removed from what I was doing, especially that I was doing research in war zones. And here I can see the impact in real time, and that's fulfilling.
Great. Thanks so much. And so, I mean, and then I will come back to the last question of Shane as well. But a lot of the, and that's also a question, I guess, for both of you, a lot of the impact to a large extent and the way you deploy technology has to be localized, because by the end of the day, a lot of the suffering happens at the local level and a lot of the tensions happen at the local level, and then it becomes, you know, kind of a broader problem as well. And so how do you go about this kind of need for localized solutions, while at the same time, Bogdan, as you rightly said, you actually do need an infrastructure that can be deployed globally, right? And also, same for you, Shawn, I think anyway, it seems to me that what you are trying to build is kind of a methodology that can be used no matter where you are. But then you still need to find a way to actually have this kind of local, I mean, especially if you want to do decision support, right? How do you do this kind of localized decision support? And the same for you, how do you capture local intelligence, for instance, Bogdan, in order to really know what are the best ways to respond to a conflict as well. And so that seems to be like a constant tension in the PeaceTech environment, right? So you need to actually localize, be customized to the kind of context, while at the same time build something that can scale across regions. So any lessons learned? Is this a tension? And how would the PeaceTech environment go about this? I don't know.
So,
Bogdan, you want to start here?
So of course, there's always this tension, but I would say the most important part of the process in dealing with this tension is how you design these tools. Because what we're trying to do as much as possible is to design them as flexible and as modular as possible, so they can be reused in other circumstances and they can be localized, and geography shouldn't change a lot in how they are deployed. And if we just need to change 5% of that solution, that's, we save 95% of the work. So that's amazing at the end of the day. And so far, I think one of the many mistakes, one of the many points of hubris of the civic technology or tech for good movements was to fetishize the role of the engineer, and to believe if you're throwing engineering power at this problem, it will solve itself to a certain degree, and it doesn't work. We're doing something else where we're quasi-fetishizing the role of the designer, the user experience designer, and we require our UX designers to be on the ground, to go and talk to the people, to understand their circumstances on the ground in different places around the world, and design the solution starting from that. And what we're doing right now is we're developing a curriculum together with Don Norman on humanity-centered design, as we're calling it, moving forward. And our objective is to have 7-8 universities around the world by the end of the year that would be our partner in implementing this curriculum, to start building this expertise, to building this experts in the next generation that can go on the ground, understand, and know how to design technology for humanitarian, for peace, and for social good. Because, of course, we develop a lot of this expertise, but for business. And we're trying to produce this change and a better world before we don't need the organizations that we have right now, as Shawn said, is to have this type of people embedded in these organizations, to have UX designers embedded in the Red Cross, embedded in the UNHCR, embedded in local governments around the world, so they can understand the technological needs and they can work with us in order to improve and in order to localize the solutions.
Great, Shawn.
Yeah, the tension that you described is the tension that I love. Like, I love the fact that we now understand that question is more obvious than it ever was, because that's exactly what that's exactly one of our founding principles of Project Didi. We're saying we have these models, and these models are universal. They work no matter where you are. How we apply it locally, that's where all the difference is made, and that's where we need to be taking into account all of the biases and cultural differences and so on. Looking within what we're getting ready for our pilot program within the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we have big questions because we know that our data isn't actually representative of every demographic group in this region. Like within the Israeli side, we have ultra-religious Jews who, they're not using the internet at all. So whatever I'm scraping from the internet isn't a reflection of them. And, so how do we make sure that that they're counted? And we're trying to figure out, well, they have all these printed newspapers. Maybe we need to start receiving those and scanning it and running it through an OCR tool, and then pumping it through our algorithms. And those are the great questions and challenges that help me believe that we're going to succeed in this. And also with that, we're looking at it in terms of our team. Especially since we as a company are dealing with perception and subjectivity, we're trying to avoid those things where I'm imagining the way that the other side or a specific demographic perceives themselves and so on, and trying to get local buy-in as much as possible and figure out, okay, how do we get the data from these people so that we build the best, so that our analysis is the best possible, and that's, for me, that's what PeaceTech is trying to be, saying there isn't a silver bullet, there isn't a one solution that works everywhere and all that. We need to figure out how to make this work locally.
Great, thanks. And Hannah, feel free to chime in. I don't want to capitalize now the audience, the chair here, but there are two more questions. Hannah, you want to chime in as well, or?
I was just going to say we have a new question in the Q&A if you'd like to ask that.
Yeah, and I will take it with the other question of Shawn, because I think we have like only a few more questions, a few more minutes, sorry, left. So one question is about what's the role of big tech, and the other question is about what are some of the breakthroughs from a PeaceTech perspective, and of course, quite often they might be related with each other, and I will add to that also, of course, the big kind of gorilla in the tech space these days is, of course, generative AI, and it also goes back to your observation, Bogdan, with regard to UX, because I think from my point of view, the real breakthrough of generative AI is kind of the chatbot, right? the conversational kind of environment that makes it easier to have access to certain content. And of course, this is very much driven by big tech, who has the capability of training and having foundational models, right? So how does all this fit in within your work, right? So big tech, breakthrough technologies, including generative AI. And so that's the last question. Are you hopeful in how this is evolving the technology? And do you feel like big tech has a role to play as such? Bogdan, and then Shawn, perhaps, and also any final reflections you might have, and then we're going to have to close.
We can't avoid big tech right now, if we wish. And I'll start with social media, and I'll start with Google. When people are looking for information, they're going to look on Google mostly. They're going to look on Facebook. They're going to look on TikTok. So it's very important for us to have very good relationship with all this company to be able to, when we build a solution, to get it up there so people can find it, and to use their solutions for people to get to our solutions at the end of the day. So, for example, in the Ukrainian context, Google helped us a lot with, if somebody was driving towards the border of Ukraine, inside Ukraine, they would already get a notification that they can access our platforms. Facebook did the same, others did the same. And this is essential for us to get to the people in need. Secondly, we work with AWS, we work with Azure. They are hosting our solutions, they're hosting our technology, and we're working with them intensively to keep these solutions safe from attacks. Thirdly, I would say the role of the telecom companies and the role of the companies working in connectivity will become larger and larger as this is becoming an issue, especially in conflict areas. And there are many other areas where we need to work with them, because, of course, even if we look at sensors, we will not be able to build better sensors than the ones built for profit. So the idea is that in situation where it's a life or death situation, many of these companies are ready to help, and even ready to help pro bono. So through us, they have an organizations that they can drive this help for the people on the ground.
Excellent. Shawn?
Yeah, I kind of have a different perspective than Bogdan. Like I could almost, flip that and say the exact opposite because, and it's interesting because Commit Global is an NGO, as he was saying, and we're a for-profit company. And so, I look at the big tech companies and I'm worried, like we're using ChatGPT to help us build our training database because I have credits through, the Microsoft Startup Hub, which is a great resource, but I know that they're trying to push me into their ecosystem, for use down the road. And when I think about, IP and all that, it's a big question. But I think what can really be helpful for us is they, Google, Meta, they all have massive amounts of data. And to be honest, I want access to it. I want to be able to use that data for good. And again, because we're not looking for the individual. We're not trying to read people's minds. We're trying to understand what the masses are thinking, and and there could be amazing support from them just by saying, "Here's anonymized data. No names, nothing. Here you go. Use it. Try and do some good with it, and we'll help you along the way." I do also look for them. I would love to have a mentor from the Microsoft or Google realms or all of that. I think I do have, things that I can learn from them. Yeah, and as for the question of PeaceTech breakthroughs, ever since the Kluz Prize for PeaceTech, I've been exposed to all of these other players within the PeaceTech world, which a couple months before that I had no idea that they existed, and all of a sudden I'm seeing companies that very much complement what it is that we're doing. So if my goal is saying, okay, Project Didi is gonna create the conditions that allow then for negotiations to happen. But that's, but as soon as negotiations start happening, we don't really have anything that we can add there. But then, here's companies like Inkless or Culture Pulse that are coming in and can add those and can provide support for mediators and governments while they're in the room and trying to imagine, what the best deals possible are. And all of a sudden I see this whole field of, wait, we all come together and we can all really get stuff done instead of trying to, me figuring out how to do everything on my own for everyone.
Great. Well, on that note, thanks so much. And I think, anyway, we could go on for another at least a few hours to explore the whole topic of PeaceTech. But I think what resonates with me a lot today is that the demand for support in this space is massive, right? I mean, it's not like conflict is decreasing. It's the opposite that is happening. Unfortunately, I do feel that if we can call it, the sector of PeaceTech is still in its early days and frankly underinvested in order to really cope with the kind of challenge that we have here. But I'm really optimistic that people like yourself, Shawn, and Bogdan are committed and also are showing the pathway for other organizations, hopefully to join, but also rightly so, Shawn, to start collaborating, because peace is a really complex topic and a complex, of course, phenomenon. And it does require, as already Bogdan was emphasizing from the beginning, it requires coordination, it requires understanding who is actually good in doing what, and how do you bring the different pieces to the table, which leads me to wonder whether we actually do need this kind of PeaceTech stack that really shows what are kind of the peace elements or the tech elements that can be used for what part of kind of the peace post prior conflict and during conflict kind of environment as well. And I think that's also part of what the Kluz Prize tried to do, which is really trying to understand kind of a 360 degrees of what are the technologies that can be used and put to good use for preventing conflict and for building peace as well. So thanks, Shawn and Bogdan, for your support. We have another prize coming up. So we will announce the Kluz Prize applications process soon. Hannah can tell us exactly when that will go live. And hope that those that were part of today's session, but also who are watching the video will become inspired like by Shawn and by Bogdan, and also submit your application moving forward so that we can also create this kind of sector and nurture the investment that is needed in order to really, Shawn, as you said, establish peace as kind of the ultimate KPI that we need in today's world of unfortunate increased conflict as well. So with that, I don't know, Hannah, whether you have some last remarks as well with regard to the Kluz Prize, but with that, thanks again, Shawn and Bogdan.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I just wanted to note that the information to apply for the 2024 Kluz Prize for PeaceTech will be available on our website in the next few weeks. So keep looking there, and you can email us if you have any questions about the prize.
Thanks so much. Take care. Best of luck.